Okay, we're ready to go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our adult select meeting, Monmouth County Council. We have one report with us this morning. That's from the homeless team there, and a couple of officers are joining as well with Ian Bakewell. But I'll start with the agenda. On agenda item number 1, to note the appointment of County Councillor Simon Howarth as chair for adult select. Can I have a movement on that, please, as members? Just agree to that, please.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, and then agenda item number 2 is to appoint a vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair, please, just in case I'm not available?
Can I nominate Councillor Brown, Louise Brown?
Do I have a second?
I second that. I'll second that, Maureen.
All right, thank you, Maureen. Do I have any other nominations from anywhere? No, okay. Louise, good morning to you, Louise, and thank you for being vice chair to myself again. I hope you don't have to stand in, but I know you're competent in doing that whenever.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
You accept that appointment, Louise? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. I'll move that one as passed. Right, I'm just going to move 10 to number 3. Apologies for absence. Do I have any apologies, Hazel, for absence?
Chair, we have apologies from Chris Bowie from Mind and Councillor Ruth Edwards. Okay, thank you, Hazel. And I'll have declarations of interest as and when members. I know Tony brought one up there. We resolved that in the pre-meeting. So if you just want to point that out, Tony, when we do start on number 5 as reference to it's not prejudicial interest, so you're fine with that one. And I think Hazel may. Is there a form for him to fill in, Hazel? Yes. Yes, Chair. We'll get that sent to you. All right. Make sure you do that form, Tony. Okay, and just bounce it off. All right. It's important you do that. And then we got agenda item number 4, open public forum. I don't think we got anything, Hazel, this morning. We don't, Chair. All right, thank you. And then agenda item number 5, homeless transition plan, progress report on what we are doing to address homelessness. And then there's an additional document, the transition plan update, which Ian and his team will bring before us. So I have Ian, Kath Fallon and Jane Oates with us this morning. Good morning, everyone. Ian, you lead on the report, whoever you want to lead on it, and then just make sure members are well aware. So if you want to introduce yourself as officers, that's great. And then we'll get into agenda item number 5. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I'm Ian Bakewell and I'm the Housing and Communities Manager for the Council. I'm responsible for the Council's housing function.
Hi there, I'm Jane Oates. I'm the Housing Options Team Manager, so I'm responsible for the homeless applications and the temporary accommodation in Housing Options.
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. I'm Kath Fallon. I'm Head of Enterprise and Community Animation. We've done a recent move of teams and housing will now sit in my area, as opposed to where it used to sit with Mark Hand in terms of placemaking, flooding and highways. Reason for that is I also look after the community support and development piece, and also employment and skills alongside the flexible funding housing support grant. And we felt it made sense to bring the teams together so they can work more seamlessly across. So thank you and good morning.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning, team. Who's going to take the report? Is it you, Ian? Just going to run through the statement with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah, and I've just done a presentation which I'm trying to get up. Okay. Just bear with me. Has that appeared?
Yes, we've got that. Everybody got that? Yeah. Yep.
Okay, if you're happy for me to plow on.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for having us again today. And today we touched on this obviously a number of times previously. I think you've received two reports, and the themes are very similar. So just to remind the committee, we're in a position, COVID related, Welsh Government have changed their policy for homelessness, and they are expecting us now to work to a new vision, a new policy, and a new norm, and that's set out in guidance for us. And very simplistically, we have to continue to support anyone that we've got in temporary accommodation, and they've required us to establish a transition plan. And the focus of that transition plan is very much about sustainable accommodation. Within that plan, we've determined 3 priorities for Monmouthshire. One is staffing, one is young people, and the other is multiple needs. And the plan is very much about improving our current accommodation, whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent, whether it's supported accommodation. But Welsh Government also now expecting us to work to homelessness should be brief and non-recurring. They've introduced this principle of rapid rehousing, and they're asking us to, quite rightly, view temporary accommodation as temporary homes, and again, where somebody can rebuild their lives. And I think what is relevant going forward, and we expect this to continue and be cemented by changing legislation, is that the homeless rules that we previously worked to around priority need, intentionality, local connection, that's essentially been suspended. So anybody that walks through the door that needs accommodation, we are required to provide them with that accommodation. So just to bring you up to speed with our current position, as of a couple of days ago, we had 151 households in temporary accommodation, and that's over 200 individuals. You'll see that that's an increase from the report I did to the committee in October. The difficult bit, or the majorly difficult bit for us at the moment, is our use of bed and breakfast. We've got 78 people in, or 78 households in B&B, and 65 of those are single people. And interestingly as well, 19 of those are young people. And again, I think that's relevant, obviously, in terms of the priorities of the council. And as we sit here at the moment, there are 25 households, again, mainly single people, that we expect to come through in the next few days and few weeks. And that's further compounded by the fact that will furlough end soon? Will the suspension of evictions end soon? We can anticipate that will happen shortly. And the profile of those people, we've got young people, we've got those suffering from mental health issues, those suffering from substance misuse issues, and we've got offenders. And that is a pretty typical picture of many of our applicants coming through at the moment. So what are we doing about it? As I said, one of the big actions for us has been looking at our staffing. Last year highlighted some big issues for us in terms of staffing, and we have come up with a new structure and looking at appointing a number of additional staffs. Basically, we're looking at staffing that will support the prevention agenda, will support the management of accommodation, support identifying new accommodation opportunities in the private rented sector, and we have got a plethora of initiatives running at the moment, actions that we need to implement, and we felt again that we didn't have the adequate strategy staff, so we will be appointing a homeless project officer, and all of those vacancies will be advertised this week. So again, just by way of a previous reminder, I won't read this list, but pre-COVID, or the COVID pandemic highlighted a lot of the difficulties and issues that we had got going forward. Some of those are prescribed by Welsh Government, so going forward there is an expectation now that we provide self-contained accommodation, and in that light we weren't offering emergency self-contained accommodation for families, for example, and those two that are highlighted, again, that sits with our priorities for Monmouthshire. We weren't able to offer, and we're still not at the moment, we're still not able to offer emergency accommodation for young people with high needs, and we haven't got a multiple needs facility, not a proper one anyway. We've got an interim arrangement, but that is a key gap for us. And as I said there, we are using a security service to help us manage our interim arrangement. So since I spoke to you last, we have made some really good progress with accommodation. It's not going as fast as I like, but we are able now to start pointing to improvements and developments. And these photos are of our family accommodation that we've now got. The top one has been provided to us by Monmouthshire Housing, and what I want to say is that the standard of this accommodation compared with accommodation that we've previously used is far superior. It's brand new. There's 4 flats in that property, and offers disability facilities. So that's been really important to us, and we've been lacking we've been lacking emergency family accommodation in the south for quite some time. So this helps to plug that gap. The property below, unfortunately, this is shared family accommodation, and it was something that Monmouthshire Housing acquired for us prior to the pandemic. So we weren't working necessarily to self-contained accommodation, but nevertheless, this is a 6-person property, and again, you'll see from that photograph of the kitchen, the standard of it is absolutely fantastic. So it really does offer good quality accommodation. And we're currently working with Mellin on a possible scheme through the social housing grant programme in Monmouth, but I suspect that could probably be another year away. Young people, as I said earlier, we've not been able to offer accommodation to young people in high need. This property belongs to Pobble, and it's actually Pobble use it as move on accommodation at the moment, and it's not actually been something that the council has directly been able to access, but they have offered it to us for use as move on accommodation, and we have acquired Welsh Government capital grant for Pobble, and this property is actually currently being refurbished as we speak. It's due to be ready probably around October, but this will be a really important provision and will help us reduce our use of bed and breakfast and placing young people in shared accommodation with adults. Another important part of this project is the involvement of children's services. So they'll be able to access the property for care leavers and those with care and support plans. These are some more of our properties that we've acquired. Again, I suppose what I'm trying to demonstrate here is the standard of accommodation that we are acquiring. The property on the left has been provided by a private landlord, and again, all brand new, fantastic quality. And the property on the right, provided by Mellin, that's come through the Social Housing Grant Development Programme, and Mellin have agreed that we can use that for homelessness. Unfortunately, the on the right is not has not been let yet, and we're expecting that property to come through in June. The property below is shared accommodation, so it's not self-contained, but although there is an expectation that we've got to continue to provide, we've got to start to work towards self-contained, we do consider that we're going to have to continue with shared accommodation for quite some time, otherwise we won't be able to meet the need that we've got coming through. But a subtlety in that photograph is that we're now beginning to provide bedding and essentials. What we're finding is that a lot of the people that are coming through don't have anything at all, and this is making us rethink some of the provision that we make available. We've not made any final decisions in terms of a policy standard, but I think that's an important piece of work that we need to do going forward. Another big step forward has been around housing support. The options team has got the responsibility for assessing homelessness and for and providing accommodation. But in our provision of accommodation, our role is to manage it. So dealing with complaints, dealing with rent, dealing with repairs, that type of activity. And what is a critical piece of the jigsaw is the housing support that is provided to applicants running alongside our management. And I've got to say, we do owe our housing support providers a massive thank you. They have really stepped up to the plate. We've asked them to make changes, reconfigure their services, and they've been phenomenal, really important. And an important part of this is that Welsh Government have actually uplifted our housing support grant provision for this year. So this has enabled us to increase our capacity of housing support in Monmouthshire. So that's been a really important step forward. But I will say that albeit we've had an uplift from Welsh Government, that uplift is still doesn't meet the Monmouthshire need. So the list there of schemes are were originally started probably about 6 months or so ago through Welsh Government Phase 2 funding, and because of the uplift that we've had from for the housing support grant, we've been able to absorb these projects into the housing support grant programme. So we've been because there was a fear at one point that even though these projects had started, we might need to finish them in April. But the good news is that we have been able to keep these going. And another area of progression is our housing support grant colleagues have established a housing intervention panel. Again, I think this is an important development in respect of complex cases. We've now got a formal mechanism for providers and agencies who are dealing with complex cases to refer a case in, and there's a multi-agency discussion around those cases to hopefully identify alternative solutions for the individual. And a few areas that we've yet to complete. As I said, we've got the young person's accommodation, which is due for completion in October this year. And the housing support grant team are looking to employ specialist staff dealing with mental health cases coming forward. And again, I think those two posts will be important resources on the basis of the level of mental health cases that we're seeing. So this slide is around the areas of work that we need to continue to be looking at. Our immediate next step is to complete the housing restructure. As I said, adverts are going out this week. Now, as things are beginning to settle down, we want to and will be looking at how we deliver homeless prevention. The priority is obviously trying to reduce the numbers of people coming through for accommodation. Can we enable them to stay at home? Can we enable them to find alternative accommodation? And the additional staffing that we've got coming through is going to be massively helpful. Existing partnerships that we've got, such as Women's Aid, for example, are going to be key. And equally, the role of housing support, being confident that housing support are leaving no stone unturned, I guess, really, in terms of prevention. Ongoing identification of accommodation opportunities. That goes without saying that we need more temporary, we need more permanent. So we have factored homelessness into the development programme. Schemes coming through. Is there an opportunity to use those for homelessness? And again, a more recent development. We've got shared housing. We've approached our RSL colleagues. Would they be willing to provide shared housing? The instinct is, I suppose, one of caution. that's one that they're going away to have a look and explore and give some more thought to. A few weeks ago, we picked up on another Welsh authority that is now starting to buy accommodation, and I think this presents a potential opportunity for the council. So we are looking at how a mechanism for buying properties to supplement our current accommodation. And that's got advantages because we can also use that for, to look at wider priorities. So again, we could potentially look at that, we could target empty properties potentially. So there's a report being developed for that, which we will be then looking to submit for approval if we consider that it's a workable proposal. And also, you'll all be aware that the council has got ambitions to become a developer in its own right. And we've been speaking to the estates team about the possibility of any proposals being used to support homelessness. And again, there's an agreement in principle that an opportunity in the south could be a potential goer in that regard. I've talked about multiple needs. This is probably our one area of real frustration at the moment. We've got an interim arrangement in Monmouth. It's as it's interim, it's not ideal, the arrangements that we've got. The support that's provided isn't. The support provided is good, but it's not the sort of support that you'd provide through a proper residential establishment. So that does have its limitation. And as I said, we have currently got a security company providing a concierge service there, and again, that is a costly arrangement. So we were looking to redevelop the property, which was going to be facilitated by potentially buying a neighbouring property, but that opportunity fell through. So we've got to start looking at this on a blank piece of paper again. So more areas that we need to look at. Again, I don't know whether you've come across the psychologically informed practice, often known as trauma-informed practice. Basically, it's whatever you do, you are you're really taking account of people's past experiences, and we know that many of our applicants haven't had the best start in life, and essentially, I think it's simplistically, I think it's that as a kinder service and a more sensitive service, and this is a requirement of Welsh Government as well. So we need to undertake some staff training and essentially start developing action plans about how we can change. Private sector housing, that continues to be massively important. We've got the Monmouthshire Lettings brand, which is making progress and has made some really good progress. But we're of the view that this really does need dedicated focus, and we're looking to recruit a dedicated officer to support that. We need more partnerships. We consider health are important partners to homelessness. So there are discussions progressing with health around how we can bring them in to support applicants. And the Welsh Government have relaxed zoning rules for housing associations. So new housing associations are able to come into Monmouthshire, as our housing associations are able to go elsewhere. And we've met with one new housing association who's gone away to have a think about some of the issues we're facing. So we're optimistic that that will present some new opportunities. Two areas that we haven't made any progress on: rapid rehousing. That's not been defined by Welsh Government as yet. Not that that's a reason for not looking at it, but at the moment we need to really understand how quickly people are progressing through our service. And once we better understand that, how can we, I suppose, how can we speed up? What would we need to do to speak up? So, but I think that's a particular piece of work in itself. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier, we want to establish a new a Monmouthshire specific standard for our accommodation, and we want to review our current provision, give consideration to what we think we should have in place. Really started as yet. And then lastly, empty homes and spaces. You'll recall the committee has discussed empty homes and particularly space above shops previously. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things to you. Firstly, empty homes. This is an area that we're of the view that we need to look at in terms of what we can and can't do as a local authority. And in that regard, we have set up a trial, and we are looking at 3 particular properties that are not in very good condition, shall we say. We've attended some training provided by Welsh Government. They've got an expert who is supporting local authorities. I'm keen that we tap into that expertise to see if that we can make some inroads on these 3 properties that we've picked. There's photos here of 2. And we're doing it with all the relevant sections within the council, and we're hoping to come up with a plan to try and bring these back into use. Again, I'm not making any promises at the moment because I don't know how straightforward it will be, but certainly we're going to give it a good bash. And obviously my desire, if possible, could if we were successful with bringing these properties back, could we use them for homelessness, and if not homelessness, certainly social housing. So, but that's a watch this space at the moment. And then we are linking in with the rest of the council in respect of reinvigorating our high streets. And a member of the team is doing a high street survey to identify any potential spaces that would offer themselves as opportunities for homelessness or accommodation generally. And that's a photograph of an office space that we visited in Chepstow, and we've been talking to the owner who is interested in whether the use of this could be potentially changed. So that survey should be completed by the end of June, and then we'll look at the results to see what, what opportunities that may present us with. So, starting to conclude, I thought again it was appropriate that we highlight the current risks that we've got going forward, and none of these risks are necessarily new to you. We've got an ongoing lack of accommodation. That doesn't change. Obviously, our use of B&B highlights that, and we've got a raft of accommodation actions to try and mitigate against that. The risk of homeless expenditure, as things are at the moment, as an authority, I believe we've been well supported by Welsh Government through their hardship fund, and that hardship fund continues as we speak, but that is due to end at the end of September. Whether anything will follow from that, I don't know, but as we sit here at the moment, that is a high risk for the council. I've previously mentioned the housing support grant capacity. Whilst we had an uplift, it's not sufficient to meet all of our needs. Housing association vacancies, again, don't meet the demand, and historically we're now suffering from low numbers of one-bedroom units that were built over the years. The stock has a very low proportion of one-bedroom accommodation, so that's going to take quite some time to rebalance. We've got our development programme, and no doubt many of you will have picked up about the phosphate issue that we've got that's affecting the north of the county. That could and probably will delay some of our accommodation schemes coming through in the north. Potential impact on the community. The team has to deal with ongoing issues around antisocial behaviour. That impacts on the team, it impacts on neighbours, it impacts on the likes of the police, and it's not uncommon for some of our B&B establishments to ask the team to move people on. When you haven't got anywhere to move people on to, that is very difficult. I've mentioned our ability to access the private rented sector. Again, I'm hoping having a Monmouthshire lettings negotiator will help strengthen that position. And as I said earlier as well, we've got the end of furlough coming along and the end of eviction proceedings. So the short to medium position is we don't think our numbers in temporary accommodation are going to change significantly over the short term. I wanted to stress the importance of the housing management capacity of the housing options team, which as I said, is being bolstered through the restructure. The massive importance of housing support that's being provided to individual clients, and the will they, won't they continue the hardship fund from Welsh Government. And as I leave today, our priorities are continuing with the new homeless, continue with recruiting to new homeless positions, continuing to look at accommodation opportunities, and continuing to revisit homeless prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and many thanks to yourself and the team for your sterling work, really, in very trying circumstances. And as you know, it's not, well, you've said quite rightly, it's not going to improve and may even get worse come September. Who knows? But at least we can prepare for it the best we can, and that's great to see that we're building the team up. I have Kath and Jane. Have you anything else to add to that, either of you, or are you quite happy for me to bring members in?
I'm quite happy for you to bring members in. I think Ian's covered the current situation very fully. Okay,
thank you, Jane. And Kath, are you okay with that one? I know it's a new portfolio for you to take on, but very trying and going to be very demanding, I see, with Ian's report there, his presentation.
Nothing further to add other than my thanks alongside yours, Chair, for all the hard work that the team are doing. They really are working exceedingly hard to help those that are in dire need at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. Members, I know we've got the report there, the update report, and Ian's give us the his slides from today, which is very important and very thorough, as he always does. Can I bring you in now for questions? I've got Martin to start. Martin. Ian, can we just 1 second, Martin? Can we just take the report down, Ian, please, if we could? If members want to go into the report, would you perhaps have to just highlight it? Right, I've got Martin. Martin, good morning, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, and your colleagues. I'd just like to give a vote of personal thanks to you and your colleagues, because every time I need to approach you about someone who lives in my ward, the commitment that you show is absolutely tremendous, and you do realise that these are not just case numbers; they're actually the lives of people as well. So a personal thanks as a member for a ward with a lot of difficulties around housing and so on. There are two issues I think I'd like to raise with you. The first is around the housing support provision. And I've got this from reading your really thorough report and just outlining to myself the sort of areas that are included in that housing support. There is a worker for substance misuse. There's a mental health social worker, 2 outreach workers for rough sleepers, a mental health support worker, support in relation to people who've suffered domestic violence or abuse, and young people's housing needs. Now, these are huge. And to quote your report, the homeless need in Monmouthshire is characterised by issues such as low income, impact of childhood trauma, substance abuse, accessing employment and training, mental health, and lack of independent living skills. We've got a huge problem here, and you and your team are doing a great job of chipping away at it, as indeed are all those other people who are involved and all those other agencies that are involved. But it's a huge societal issue. And with the best will in the world, and talking obviously in very broad brush strokes, to which there will be many exceptions, but the young homeless teenager or the young person in their 20s with mental health issues, or the alcoholic who is struggling to hold down a job and a home and a relationship, these people are not going to go through their lives and suddenly become model parents who will bring up the next generation of children to lead fulfilling lives. In other words, housing is just a part of a huge social issue that I see all too often reflected in my ward. I've seen examples in Monmouthshire where we have worked at a multi-agency level to actively think outside the box. And I've seen examples in social service provision, for example, where they've worked with Swansea University. In education, I know EAS have commissioned research studies in that particular instance, to look at why children on free school meals have got such a huge gap in attainment. But they're all related issues. And it seems to me that one way in which we could try to break out of this vicious intergenerational circle of poverty is to try to find how we can break into it. And I would like to suggest that as an authority, and perhaps invite other agencies and other authorities into this, that we commission an academic study of the best way of breaking into this cycle, so that we're not just helping these people in the short term, but actually helping these people and their children and the next generation after that, because I don't think we're doing that yet. Mm-hmm. And then the second area I'd like your views on really is simply around where we are with the amount of housing stock that we've got. I'm aware of that new and I suspect much more difficult job that you've got to do, where homelessness by law that's going to be coming in that you referred to has to be brief and non-repeated, and also that councils need to work towards rapid rehousing and providing long-term accommodation. Now, I think that we are failing you dramatically as a county council, because you have not got the tools, it seems to me, to be able to do this. And I know you've updated figures today, and forgive me, I'm using figures that were in your report. But for example, the use of B&B placements, 2018-19, it was 36. 2020-21, it was 369. From the same table, the number in temporary accommodation in 2018-19 was 21. In 2020-21, it's 144. The percentage of households threatened with homelessness that were successfully prevented has gone down from 67% to 35%. You are doing your very best, but it reminds me of the people I see in the gym on the running treadmill. Their legs are going like the clappers and they're running flat out, but they're not actually getting any further forward. And it seems to me, and you've referred to it, that there are a couple of things we need to be doing. I was made aware of the fact that in one of the North Wales authorities is looking to buy up former social housing to try to enable people to stay in their local communities. I'm glad we're looking at that. Is that likely to be up and running? You referred to it coming up. Any idea when? And the second is, and again, you've alluded to this, have we not now reached the point where we actively need the county council to be a provider of housing in its own right and not to rely on private landlords and housing associations to provide our housing stock for us? Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Any answers, Ian, for Martin?
Okay. Well, in terms of the housing stock issues, I think the proposal in regards to buying properties is being given serious consideration. The ball is currently in my court in terms of developing a proposal. Obviously I can't speak for the cabinet or senior management, but certainly there is interest from senior management, and it's senior management that are asking me to progress that as a proposal. So we are currently working on that at the moment, and to be honest with you, I think in the next few weeks we'll have finished that and be able to present that. So I think it's been around, it's particularly been around understanding the cost and what we can and can't do. So that's the first thing. And again, in terms of the authority being a stockholder, obviously I would welcome that as an officer. But again, that's obviously something for the council as a whole to make that decision. I think what I would say is that we are, I consider we are being well supported by our partners in terms of accommodation. You know, the housing associations have been bringing properties forward. Monmouthshire Housing particularly have acquired stock specifically for the housing options team. And you know, one of those slides, you know, Mellon have agreed to just hand over the accommodation to us directly. So so I think we are being well supported, and I guess I still think we've got the challenge that we are Monmouthshire, and that does present us with unique circumstances compared with a lot of authorities, and one of the issues is around affordability. Well, Welsh Government do recognise that, and is something that we regularly discuss with them. So I think, and the other point you raised about the poverty cycle, Martin, we completely agree, completely understand you on that. Can I probably be appropriate for me to bring Kath in at this point, because obviously leading on the poverty work for the authority.
Thanks, Ian. Yes, I mean, to be honest, Councillor Grocott, your comments are really timely. As you're aware, when we put forward the housing sort of action plan, it was part of our social justice strategy update in March. As part of that, we were looking really at our phase 3 of our community support network, the work that was ongoing. Well, we pivoted really and developed as part of our response to COVID-19 pandemic. And the community support network now is taking us towards phase 3, where our community and partnership development team, who previously have been working within our communities in terms of volunteering, etc., are now working very closely with our adult social care colleagues, particularly in terms of some of the work that Nikki Needle and her team have been doing in terms of the Changing Places, Changing Lives work. And only this week we've started talking about how we look at more of a proof of concept and look at more research and working with the Welsh School of Social Care Research. So exactly what you're saying really in terms of how we break this cycle, how we sort of take forward the work that we've got as part of our Tackling Poverty and Inequality action plan as well, and how we align that then with our flexible funding, which obviously supports our Children Communities Grant and our Housing Support Grant, to ensure that we're working better across the piece, not only with partners but also internally as well. So you know, as I say, your comment was very timely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks both. Martin, just going back to your original question before I bring Louise in there, would you like that as a recommendation from the Select Committee, reference to a study?
Chair, thank you very much. I would be absolutely delighted, because I think it's one very positive way in which as members we can support our hard-working officers.
Okay. I just then would just seek members' approval of that before we actually agree to that. Members, would you be happy for Martin's recommendation to go forward from the Select, just to incorporate it into the report there? Anyone? Yep. Are we okay with that one? I've got a couple there. Any other members? Yep. Roger? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely essential, I reckon. That's the whole point of a Select Committee, I reckon, to put forward such recommendations.
Okay, Malcolm, I see you just come in there. Malcolm, are you okay with that? Yep. Okay. Any other members? Maureen? Yeah. Okay. Who else have we got? I have got no issue with that. Sheila, are you okay with that? Just a recommendation from us. Okay. That's unanimous from the select committee. Martin, we just read out for us that what you'd like just including within the recommendation from the select committee, if that'd be great, and then we can just make sure Hazel minutes that, and then we can just pass that forward then and see where we can go with that with the select committee and taking that forward. Okay, Martin, just read it out to us again, please, if you don't mind.
Well, there's nothing actually written down. It's a stream of consciousness, which I will try to remember. The first thing, though, was to set up a study, preferably an academic study, to try to find a way to break into that cycle of poverty, so that all of these people, who all the different agencies are working with, can actively in the future move towards breaking that cycle of deprivation and poverty. And then the second thing was, if we're going to meet new statutory duties, that homelessness is brief and non-repeated, and that we need to work towards rapid rehousing and providing long-term accommodation, that the council should build its own accommodation once again. Okay. I hope Hazel will be able to get something from that. She knows where I am if she needs any clarification. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, so as a select committee, we've got a couple of things there, and I think probably the first one will be probably a larger agendaed one for a Gwent County one, really, more than anything, surveying a study for a larger region there, because working together on that one will be a lot better. But I'm sure, Ian, you've got the point there that we were getting to on here, because it's just something that we feel we need to look at. Right, so we've agreed to that then, so that's sorted out. Hazel's got that down, so we will make sure that's included. So I'm going to Louise and then Tony. Louise?
Councillor Louise Brown, Vice Chair of this committee and member for Shire Newton Ward. I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of the hard work and effort of the staff in terms of tackling this problem, because obviously it's a continuing one, and it's a great challenge to do so, and you know, all the hard work and commitment that's been put in, and I think that needs to be recognised. At the end of the report, you mentioned about the problems with the COVID hardship fund and how that is going to impact things. What sort of extra finances might actually be needed if there isn't a continuation of that hardship fund? And you know, in the long term, how can that funding be obtained? You know, hopefully from a Welsh Government source supporting it. The second thing that is a problem is obviously the one-bedded accommodation that is difficult to obtain in Monmouthshire, and you mentioned about you know, private landlords and bespoke packages and things. I mean, there are a lot of disincentives in terms of individual private landlords actually purchasing properties because of the fact that the stamp duty costs more. There's the capital gains tax that they have to pay on the sale of it, and there's also the government used to help with interest in terms of taking off that in terms of private rented accommodation. All that has gone. And I think, in a sense, a private landlord would want to have a guaranteed income, but also cover for any damage caused, because obviously there is more of a risk potentially. And I suppose the third thing that they would probably be interested in is housing support in terms of things like antisocial behaviour and so forth. So, I mean, those are the sort of things, but some of those are sort of Welsh Government things. I mean, the Welsh Government could, if they wanted to, you know, allow for better incentives for private landlords to purchase properties for rent in the homeless market if they took away the stamp duty and the capital gains tax, and you know, sort of provided more incentives. And that's obviously one of the reasons why there is a shortage, not only in Monmouthshire, but you know, across the board with regard to accommodation. The other issue is that I know in a local authority I was in before, there was extra costs involved if, for example, it was sort of a one-bedded accommodation and a house of multiple occupation, because there had to be extra fire doors and everything else. So, you know, there are sort of cost disincentives, and particularly in Monmouthshire in regard to the affordability of accommodation in the first place. And so those are the sort of issues that really, in a sense, that need the Welsh Government input, and also you know, sort of incentivising private landlords to get involved. The third point I'd like to make, I mean, obviously there is a concern about, for example, the young people in a transport service section in bed and breakfast accommodation, because they must be possibly, you know, they're not near to a town or any other facilities, and it might be quite isolating. The other point that I'd like to make is about what support is coming from the health side, because you know, it mentioned about a mental health worker for social services, but what about mental health housing support workers from the health authority? You know, because the health authority is in a position where they generally have more resources than the local authority does, and it should be an area that they're stepping into. I know that some work has been done, and I know that you know, you're involved in sort of multi-agency partnerships, but I think it's something that they should be stepping in on more, to do more, because, you know, it's obvious that, you know, the mental health social worker is from the local authority side, you know, and so, you know, why aren't we getting the similar sort of support actually linked into housing, you know, so that they can provide that support where it's actually needed. And it could be linked in to, you know, not only RSL providers, but also it could be linked into providing support in the private rented sector as well. So, I mean, they're just some ideas, you know, to throw in, and I don't know whether they've probably been considered, but I mean, the Welsh Government does now have taxation provisions that they have been devolved. So there is the opportunity for them to do more to actually incentivise people, you know, only making exceptions for people who want to purchase, private landlords who want to purchase property to specifically rent for the homeless sector, you know, so that it is actually geared and it is actually useful in that respect. So, I mean, there's lots of grants that could be provided, you know, to reassure any damage, you know, that tenants might do to property. I mean, those are the sort of concerns I would imagine that the private rented sector would have in relation to these type of things. And I think the one-bedded accommodation is the one that we have got problems with, but I don't know whether you're talking about one-bedded accommodation in terms of shared living room and kitchen, or whether you're talking about one-bedded accommodation in relation to self-contained accommodation, because obviously that's different, and you know, that might require more internal work on existing properties. So I hope that there's some ideas that might assist. Probably I've gone on a bit too much. I don't know whether you've got all of those different points.
I hope my memory doesn't let me down.
Yeah, because I think I'm like Martin. I tend to cover a lot of things that I think about at once, but hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. Well, just going through in order then, your first query about hardship, just to give you a better feel of what that is being spent on. That is supporting our B&B expenditure. We're incurring management costs, so we've got accommodation where we're keeping bedrooms empty, so we're losing income. It's covering the concierge service, which is covering a number of properties, and a few incidentals like taxis, provision of meals, where we're using B&Bs in remote locations. And I've got to say, if Welsh Government did withdraw that funding, I mean, we would obviously have to make some difficult decisions. Do we stop providing the security? You know, for example, we've actually got staff, dedicated staff in our B&Bs. So again, that's being supported by the funding. So we'd have to make a decision as a council whether we stop doing it or whether the council is able to would be able to backfill that. So, but we, you know, be assured that we are lobbying Welsh Government on that. We met with Welsh Government, Jane and I met with Welsh Government yesterday, so they do know the implications. And this is a personal view, but I believe that because we've got the same minister following the election, I like to think that will give us a bit of continuity. But you know, I'm just not in a position to indicate either way on that. With regards to the private rented sector, I guess really the issues that you've raised about guaranteed income, about underwriting damage, dealing with antisocial behaviour, they are the sort of, should we say, disincentives that we want to support landlords with, and we will help cover damage. One of our options is we provide a leasing option, so that provides guaranteed income. And I was going to say we have a continual conversation. It's probably a stop-start conversation due to not having a dedicated member of staff, but we're always looking at how we can offer landlords better value for money. We're not pretending to be a high street agency. We consider that we offer an alternative, but it's a different sort of alternative, and it's probably around supporting landlords with the hassle of being a landlord, and we do offer a number of different options. And when I talk about bespoke packages, what we're actually saying, or trying to say publicly, is any landlord, come and talk to us. If there's something that's of interest or something of concern, we're open to working with you in that regard. And I think having a dedicated member of staff who hopefully can bring some private sector experience as well, I think will be an important step forward to us. You talked about the B&B situation at Raglan. The issue there that we've got, obviously Raglan is an important resource to us. but we recognise its location, and I think it's probably characteristic of our challenge at the moment, because obviously any accommodation that we offer, we want it to be in people's homes, you know, in their own communities, and obviously don't, you know, that accommodation provision needs to support their needs. But I think it just highlights the challenges that we've got. In terms of health, again, I think I can offer you some reassurances. I mean, health are involved at the moment. I mean, really on the back of the GDAS service and the substance misuse support that we've started benefiting from. I mean, that's been really important, and I think it's demonstrated there's something that we can build on. And the conversations have started. I mean, Jane's in regular contact with the community mental health team. Believe me, there are still conversations to be had. I think Councillor Graham-Cott intimated it's all very well us providing a property, but the property alone is not the answer to a lot of people's support needs, and we most definitely need to bring those other agencies in to provide that wraparound support. But I think the most interesting conversation I've had recently was Health established I don't know much about it, to be honest, but they established a team of 8 people who were going out, and it was targeting rough sleepers. That project, by its very nature, I believe concentrated on Newport. Obviously, as an authority, we do have rough sleeping, but we've been fortunate we don't have it to the same extent of some of the more urban authorities. But that project of eight workers is currently being reviewed, and my desire is to see that project have a wider remit.
Yeah.
You know, it can't be just rough sleeping.
Isn't couldn't I just suggest I mean, the COVID hardship fund, you know, is obviously been to get people off the street, you know, to avoid the COVID crisis. But in a sense, that COVID hardship fund should really be relabelled part and parcel of this Welsh Government policy to basically get people into permanent accommodation, you know, because in a sense it's part and parcel of the same thing, isn't it? You know, so I think you know, it could almost be relabelled this new homeless policy, really, couldn't it? And you know, and I suppose from that way, hopefully get that funding continued.
I think Welsh Government are looking to fund things in different ways. I mean, at the end of the day, that pot of money is an emergency pot of money. They probably didn't expect for it to be continuing so long, but that's what it is in the moment. It's an emergency fund. But as I said in my presentation, they have put additional funding into our housing support grant programme, and that's obviously Wales wide. I think it was 40 million for Wales as a whole, and they've put additional monies into like our social housing grant programme this year. So it is recognised and it is is understood that there are resource issues at a local authority level. Obviously, how that pans out, I don't know, but certainly they do understand our predicament.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to come in later with another issue, but I think I've said enough at the moment, but thank you very much for your response.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Tony?
Before I start, I've got to disclose that I'm on the citizens panel of Monmouthshire Housing Association. I'd like to go further with Councillor Brown's thoughts about mental health and tie those into Ian's comments about proposing a sort of a process map for the whole process of going from homeless to having permanent accommodation. There are many steps there, and in the last year I've come across two circumstances. I work with disabled people. In one instance, at the beginning, somebody was sofa surfing and was not recognised as being homeless. Ian knows well this case. And the mental health impairment there was not so much for the lady who was sofa surfing, but her daughter, the marital relationships, and the mental health of the children who were all living in this one accommodation. Now, I don't think she was ever recognised as being homeless, but the mental health impairment on failing to get this lady who was sofa surfing into permanent accommodation was significant on other people other than those being rehoused. A little bit further down the process map, you're going from some sort of temporary accommodation into secure accommodation. I've got a client or a pair of clients at the moment who spent a considerable length of time in a car, living in a car for several months. And eventually they managed to get some temporary accommodation provided by, I'm not sure who, but something associated with the council in Monmouth. And they have yet to be rehoused. And they phoned me up concerned about the process of being housed from a temporary accommodation into a suitable permanent accommodation, because they don't feel that they're being offered things which are suitable for their particular impairments. And because of COVID, I've not been able to meet with them. I can only talk to them on the phone, and their circumstances, I'm having to go by what they say. But the mental health effect of them being threatened with, as they see it, being taken and put back into a car is significant. So the mental health impairment thing, it doesn't just drive you into homelessness in the first instance, which is what I think a lot of people consider as the mental health impairment, but is part of the process as we go along the way. And I do make the point that the first person I was talking about, the lady who was sofa surfing, was an older person. Almost exclusively here we've been referring to people who have social problems when they're very young, or when they're in the first 20 or 30 years of their lives. But the issue of homelessness does affect older people, and it did in this lady who was sofa surfing. So I just want to put those markers down, that there are mental health impairment in the whole process here, that we are looking at an age group which is not necessarily young, and that the idea of doing a process map to find the log jams in the whole system, I think it will be a great idea to see where resources should be best to be put in the future for efficiency. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Ian, have you any response to Tony's statements? And I've got Jane then wants to come in as well.
Hi, Tony. I was going to say, sorry, Ian. Tony, I am aware of the case, the second case that you're talking about there, and it's quite a complex case with quite a long history across other local authorities as well. So I'm happy to have a conversation with you away from here to put you into the loop as to the circumstances of this couple, because it's not as straightforward as just two people in a car. So it is slightly more complex, and is one of our more complex cases. But please be reassured that Home Search are following the policy as they should for this couple. But I can speak to you at a separate time, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Tony? Thanks, Jane. That's great. That is. Thanks. Ian, have you anything else to just point on?
I mean, just really to confirm. I mean, Tony's quite right. I mean, the mental health issues are, not just for applicants, but for family as well. And some households, have really difficult, and that's and and that's not blind to us. We do what we can really to support everybody, and in the particular case that Tony mentioned, an elderly lady, we were able to support her with temporary accommodation. She's got self-contained accommodation, and she's round the corner from her family as well. So I've not heard the up-to-date situation, but we were able to help the lady, and all being well, she's well placed now to be bidding for permanent accommodation.
Okay, thanks for that. I've got Maureen and then Roger. Maureen?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There's two things, but one really annoys me is the fact that we did have a planning we were allowed a planning at Raglan for a great deal of houses, and the proportion of low-cost housing was tremendously high. And unfortunately, the Welsh Government overturned it. And this is what, which makes it so frustrating. The other thing was, how many houses are empty where the landlords aren't able to sell them because they're quite large and that could be used for sharing, because even in the working people in big cities, it's the norm for people to share houses. They have a bedroom each, and they share the kitchen and all that sort of thing. And in places like London and Bristol, that's quite the norm. So, what would it be possible for the landlords, if they can't sell these houses and they're stood empty, for them to allow them to be used for accommodation? Because I'm sure there'd be a lot of single people about who'd be quite happy to have a bedroom for themselves as a bed sit and to share a kitchen. And I don't know how you could go about it, whether there'd be a rent that we'd have to pay for it or not. But what's the chances of that being used a bit more?
Well, there's two things on that. We probably twice a year we contact empty property owners to find out what is happening with their properties, and it's a soft, proactive approach whereby we try and encourage property owners to adopt any of the available options. I've got to be honest, that is probably quite a challenge. Empty property owners often don't like us contacting them. But we do consider as a team that shared housing is important in the short term. We have got, I can't remember how many properties we've got now. We've probably got 13, 14, 15 properties with shared facilities, and that's accommodating about 70 people at the moment. And it's easy to forget that we've only been doing it a few years.
Yeah,
I think it's about 3 years. And when we started doing that, we were offering an additional housing option that many authorities weren't. So we were able to accommodate rough sleepers using it. We were able to accommodate single people that wouldn't have previously been considered in priority need. But it does have its disadvantages from the point of view of shared living. Obviously, there's many views about shared living. That's not the ideal, and we'd acknowledge it. It's not ideal. However, we as a team think it will be needed in the short to medium term, and I don't know how we can move away from stopping doing it. But one of the complications is Welsh Government working towards this self-contained policy, which I don't think any of us would disagree with that. Self-contained is an appropriate direction to go to. But what we don't want to do, and again, I think other authorities share this with us, that we can't turn off the shared tap for the time being, you know, because otherwise we will have a gap in provision. So we're on a journey, and I suppose what I don't know is how long it's going to take us to get out of that journey. But because of Welsh Government's view, they will not fund shared housing. So if we're going to do it, we've got to do it using our own mechanisms.
Yeah, it seems a bit sad, that, doesn't it? But there we are. Thank you, Annie. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Maureen. I've got Roger and then Sheila. Roger.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, congratulations, Ian, and your team. I've been a councillor for a long time now, and I just forget how many times, Ian and your team, you've been in front of us and telling us the miracles that you're managing to perform on the rubbish money that you get and the facilities you have. And I sincerely mean this. You know, over the years, it's incredible what you have done, and I'm sure you're going to carry on doing your best for a long time. But it's interesting, you know, we're hearing quite a few mentions today about the Welsh Government, and one in particular. I think Louise was talking about capital gains tax and stamp duty being controlled by the Welsh Government. As far as I'm aware, that is not the case. It's down to the national government there. And while we're on about it, I think it's absolutely important to know that obviously we're all strapped for cash, and that was going on before COVID. COVID's made it even worse. But what's never mentioned, or very rarely mentioned, certainly it's only mentioned by certain members of the Labour group in County Hall, is we've been suffering from austerity from the National Westminster Government since 2010, where about must be up to 40% of our rate support grant has disappeared. How we're actually managing to keep our heads above the water under the circumstances is quite amazing. So it's not the nasty Welsh Government down there. Don't forget about the even nastier national government in Westminster. Sorry about the political bit, but I think it's important.
Roger, I think do we have a question, Roger? I think we we don't get into
it's not a question. It's the fact that I want to congratulate Ian and his team. I said I've been here a long time, and I know the work that they've been doing over the years, and I think it's important that I actually say that, but also to remind people that it's not just the Welsh Government that controls us, and you know, we're not the sole arbiters of all the money that gets spent. Thank you, Chair.
That's okay, Roger. Understand. Louise, I see you just wanted to come back in there. Maybe just reference to, before I bring Sheila in, just reference to,
just to say, I'm not sure about the capital gains tax side, but I do know that the taxation has been devolved to the Welsh Government, and also is stamp duty in England, and it's land transition tax in Wales. And on the land transition tax, which we know as stamp duty, the Welsh Government does have control over that. So just to mention that as a point that was made. Then I got another question, but I ought to go back on the list under everybody else who's waiting to speak. But I just wanted to clarify that point, you know, because there are some things that are devolved to Wales, and I know at least the stamp duty or land transition tax is one of them. Thank you.
Okay, can we just have some clarity on that, Hazel, as well, just to make sure that we minute it right? Are we going to put that in the minutes, please? Okay, I've got Sheila. Maureen, I think you got your hand back up again, or it hasn't gone down. Maureen?
All right.
Sheila. Yeah.
Oh, it's gone now? Right. Sorry.
It has, yes, that's lovely. Sheila?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to add my thanks and appreciation to the team. Ian, you and your team do a fantastic job. It's not a job, it's a vocation. You go to great lengths to look after people who are homeless, and I just applaud everything you do. You'll be pleased to know you've already answered most of my questions, but I was going to ask you how many people are still in need of accommodation, but you've mentioned 25. Obviously, and also with regard to linking up with other local authorities, you've mentioned that as well with regard to developing and sort of obtaining buying properties. So that would be something. It's good to know we're working with other authorities, because you're not really on your own then, are you? You can sort of use best practice and talk about common problems and save a lot of time in that respect. Just one little thing I'd like you to sort of expand upon for me a little bit. You mentioned there's no boundaries. Obviously during COVID, that anybody presents themselves, you look for accommodation. Has that had a big effect on the numbers that you were looking after and the accommodation you're seeking? Thank you.
Absolutely. That's the core of the issue. We've gone from March last year, where if somebody presented that wasn't in priority need, we wouldn't have provided them with accommodation. We would have provided them with advice and assistance as per our legal duty. But now anybody coming through, we have to provide accommodation. As I say, it started as a public health issue, and it still is a public health precaution. But what it has done, it's put us on a journey to reviewing homeless legislation, and the talk about reviewing homeless legislation is not new. It's been on the cards for several years. The issue is if you relax everything in terms of homelessness, what you're actually doing. I mean, the resource implications are significant, and obviously the current situation has highlighted that. But I think what it has done, it has flushed out the hidden homelessness and the hidden issues that we've got. Whilst it's a real challenge dealing with that at the moment, I think that's a good thing. We've without doubt, between us all, we have got a better understanding of the need and the issues in Monmouthshire, and I think that's one positive I would take out of the current situation.
Could I just add something to what you've just said there, Ian, in terms of obviously there's so there is no such thing as priority need, and we don't expect that to change. Obviously, the Homeless Action Group are also looking at intentionality and local connection, and possibly doing away with that in the future as well, which obviously will bring another challenge to us as a local authority. As we are a beautiful rural authority at that as well. There's the other issue that we do have. Obviously, we've got people coming in that are non-priority. We are also under the obligation, under public health measures, and and under legislation at the moment, that nobody is to be outside. So even though we do have a fair number of people that struggle in temporary accommodation with antisocial behaviour and substance misuse and mental health issues, if they break down that accommodation and are no longer able to live there due to assault or antisocial behaviour, we have to place them somewhere else. So we're in this perpetual circle at the moment with the bed and breakfast of moving people round, so that we don't have anybody rough sleeping. I think we've probably got about 3 people that we are unable to accommodate due to the risks that they present to people at the moment. But that is the other situation that we're in, is that obviously we've got people coming in the front end. We've got our huge cohort that are currently in bed and breakfast that are genuinely struggling with behaviour, and a very small exit into RSLs and private rented. So we are really facing a logjam with people with a number of multiple needs within this accommodation. So that, there's a logjam all the way along really at the moment, and that's what that is what makes the role of the accommodation officers and the team quite difficult. So yeah, but they're doing a fantastic job, and I will definitely take back the thanks that you're giving us today.
Thank you. Just one last little question then, with regard to locality. Are there many people coming into Monmouthshire who weren't, has there been an increase in the number of people coming into Monmouthshire in particular?
I'd probably say we could count that number on 2 hands at the moment, but obviously I think we have been lucky that information isn't out there at the moment, but obviously if that is promoted, giving people the choice of where they wish to present as homeless could pose future issues to us in our capacity. And obviously the people that we are accommodating that have no local connection at the moment, what we do is take the homeless application and then allocate them to the local authority that they're from. But if they choose not to go, we have no grounds to force them to go, so they stay within the accommodation with no local connection, which then impedes their move on. So it's a great experience that the Welsh Government have introduced us to, but the legislation isn't there to back us up yet in terms of what we can do if people refuse to move on, which is what is happening at the moment.
Right. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sheila. Right, I've got a last one from Louise. I've just got a few myself, so I'll bring you back in, Louise.
Yeah, really, just a couple of questions. Obviously, from that, if the legislation changed on the local connections side, because obviously that would have a huge impact on local authorities that are struggling with the capacity issues at the moment in dealing with it, and the affordability of accommodation. So it will be there'll be even more emphasis on providing the resources according to the need and the demand, wouldn't there? Because I can see that being a future issue if people can present as homeless in any area. And I thought the idea of the local connection was really so that they could be connected in a sense to the support mechanisms of family or friends, so it doesn't seem quite right to remove that particular support, because I thought that was the whole idea of the local connection idea, that you basically have family or friends in the area. And I don't know how that would impact on the affordable housing policies that we have in terms of saying that people have to have a local connection to a particular area in terms of providing that support and network with their own family and with their own friends. So I think it will be a shame if they did remove that, because it's not only I know it allows freedom of movement to where you want to live, but on the other hand, it removes some of the support mechanisms as well, and I think that needs to be pushed as well. But on the affordable housing side, we have got an affordable housing policy, but my concern is that obviously the developers in Monmouthshire want to build the large 4-bedroomed properties, and our affordable housing policy does say that we should look at the capacity of a site, as opposed to, and if there is a capacity to build, say, smaller accommodation with at least, say, 35% of that affordable, then that's what we should be doing rather than building, you know, large houses. And there are ways in which private developers seem to get round, you know, providing any either financial contribution or basically providing on site the affordable accommodation, which is what we actually want. And they seem to, you know, just provide a small sum as towards affordable accommodation, which is nothing like what the cost of a separate dwelling would be. And the other way they seem to get around it is, say, for example, there's 2 or 3 house areas that 2 or 3 houses that they want to develop. They basically put in separate applications for them so that they don't get to the 3 houses or more level and get around it that way, you see. And we shouldn't, and the applications are, you know, even within the same year or two. So we shouldn't be allowing all of those loopholes to be going through, which we seem to be doing at the moment. And I think we ought to look a bit more carefully at how, you know, be a bit more stringent with the actual policy that we've got, which talks about the capacity of the site and building things on site as opposed to making very minimal financial contributions, because that would assist in providing the housing that we need. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Louise. Yeah, it's a very valid point there, but yeah, I mean, our destiny's our own, I think, and going back to what we've said is do we actually regenerate ourselves into providing some affordable homes on actual council land as well, you know, which we are going to explore in the next little phase of our LDP, our revision of our LDP. I've just got a few questions there. Ian, your team build up in the report says hopefully should be to full complement in August. Are we going to hit that, do you think? Yes, as long as the people come forward, yeah?
Yeah, fingers crossed, but as you say, it really does depend on the level of applications and the quality of those applications. I didn't mention it earlier, but it is actually a risk to the authority, because there is a shortage of homeless workers in Wales now, particularly around housing support, because every local authority is doing the same. So people are being hoovered up. So it is a risk.
Yeah, and is there any side of that? Let's say for I know the training side of it. So let me give you an example. Being a social worker and handling aspects of a social worker is going to be slightly different to being a social worker handling housing needs, etc. I mean, I know there's probably strands coming off it. So will there be training for, let's say, will we be taking on the odd apprentice, let's say, young person to train them to in a speciality of housing and things like this? You know, I mean, it's like being an estate agent, isn't he? And we might think we can sell a house or whatever, but at the end of the day, estate agents sell houses or auctioneers sell houses, whereas we think we can do it, but we actually can't. So there's that aspect of it. Are we taking any young people on, or any people on as apprenticeships, or offering that kind of scope within the employment side?
We haven't as part of this proposal. We have previously looked at that side of things, but we haven't done it on this occasion. Training, though, I think is a real key issue for the team. I think the last year they've been exposed to some very challenging scenarios. I think things are happening at pace, and I think it's incumbent as a local authority to make sure that we support those staff as as fully as possible. So I will acknowledge probably over the last year or so, we've pulled back from training because of finances. Certainly don't approach training like we used to. But Jane and I are certainly looking at a new programme of training to support those staff. And I'll give an example. A couple of days ago, or this week, I think actually, Jane, isn't it? You've been doing training with Mind about about how to have conversations really with people in need.
Okay, I've written down here rural accommodation, urban accommodation, and I'm talking about Monmouthshire. I know Cardiff and Newport, the big cities, are different aspects. So we would be looking more to locate in urban, wouldn't we? I.e., there's the facilities there, transport links, etc., etc. And I know Raglan came up there. So going back to LDPs and things like that, and empty properties or empty shops, let's say, with flats, etc. We would persist in probably more urban than spending resources and time on rural, even though they're important. But it's the allocation of somebody who's homeless or whatever. You know, if you put them in a rural area, they've still got to get in and out of there, and for their mental health as well. You know, I mean, they probably link round more urban areas, and I say that's really difficult. It's just I've written that down there. The other one I've written down here, and I don't know why I've written it, but I will remember in the next couple of seconds, Neville Hall. And I think that's going back to emergency accommodation. As you know, Neville Hall, everything's been and I don't know what they're doing in Neville Hall there, but I know they do have large blocks there, which is accommodation in Neville Hall. It's close to the town. It's got great links for things. So I only put that down there as reference to a conversation I had with somebody the other day. Is Neville Hall, is there a facility with the health board there to actually help us out there with Neville Hall, the accommodation they've got in Neville Hall? I don't know what they're using it for. They may have had a lot of people coming in working in Neville Hall with COVID who were temps or whatever and using it. Now there may be a lot of accommodation free there. I know it's shared or whatever, but it's just a punt for me is, have you thought about Neville Hall? And the other one I've got there is, and you did mention it slightly, and I know it's so important now, is the landlord eviction under legislation. That is due to end in September. So a landlord now by law cannot evict anybody. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
And that ends in September. That poses a big risk then, doesn't it? What risk do you think that we will have as an authority looking on the database there? A great risk, or we can manage that? What's your thoughts on that one then? So I think that's important as well, because if come September, a lot of our landlords who can, let's say, are really, their hands are tied now at the moment. If they're not happy with the tenant there, they cannot evict them. Have we had any feedback on that? Is it going to pose a serious issue for us in Monmouthshire, or do you think we can handle that?
Well, any additional demand is unhelpful demand, even if it's low numbers. I mean, Jane might be able to elaborate on this, but my understanding is that we are beginning to get early signs of some individual landlords that might be looking to acquire possession. And from what I can gather, it's probably less about tenant issues. It's just the fact that they want their properties back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we did an exercise a few months ago where we started contacting a number of lettings agencies to offer them support. Well, the purpose of contacting them was to identify low-level issues that they might have with their existing tenants, and whether we could, assist in any way. So just for sake of argument, if somebody's got low-level rent arrears, well, we could pay those off. In the knowledge that hopefully that will stop that case coming forward. But that attempt, I don't know whether we've been to every agency, but certainly the agencies we approached, we got we got very, very little back. So in terms of numbers, where we are in terms of possibility, unless Jane can elaborate, I don't know, but any demand at the moment is demand that we could do without. So
okay, just something I thought I'd just highlight, because that is another massive burden come September, i.e. we don't have the support, and then all of a sudden we find that a lot of people we are using as landlords to help us out actually say no more now, that's it, and then we end up with another burden on us. So it's just something we have to keep an eye on. I think that's it. I got nothing else on there. I think, like I say, I'll just enforce what we said before, and every member said on the committees is massive thank you to you guys and for your work and as you know, I like Roger, I've been about here for quite some time now, so we know you try your best, and the devil you know, the devil you don't know in this game, as I say, it's you won't please everyone. Right, I'm gonna, there's nothing else there, and I've got nothing in the chat bar, I've got nothing else. So I've got the recommendations on your report, Ian. I think we're all in agreement, and I think we've all give it a good airing. And I'll just go into the recommendations in 2. To consider the current risks, pressures and challenges relating to the meeting of local homelessness need and providing accommodation for homeless applicants. Number 2.2, to consider and comment on the progress of implementing the homeless transition plan. And 2.3, Adult Select Committee to scrutinise progress for receiving a further update in 6 months' time. Are we still happy, members, with that? Yes, to just ask the team to come back in 6 months. So what will that give us? June, July, August, September, October. Probably early autumn there, something like that, if it's possible, Ian, just to put something together. Members, are we okay with that?
Yes, yep. Fine.
Yeah, I've got a nod of head. And then I've got the how can I word this? I've got a recommendation from Councillor Kruger with a endorsement from the select that we look at collaboration, perhaps on the first one, with other authorities in doing a piece of work. Hazel will put that in into a format for us, and we'll make sure that you're happy with that. She'll post that out for us, and we'll endorse that then and we could call it 2.4 as well. The select committee came up with a proposal as well. So are we happy to do that? Yes. Yep. Okay, that's great, no problem. Right, thank you very much, guys, and keep up, and chins up, and we'll keep going. We all keep going, don't we? Right, I'm going to move on to the agenda there now. Just bear with me a second. I'll just flick it off screen and put my other one up there. Right, agenda item number 6. We will look at the forward work programme. Everybody happy with that work programme?
Yeah.
Yep. I think there's nothing in there which we could say that is going to be urgent. I think Julie Boothroyd in our June meeting. We got Hazel. Are you on board? Yeah, Hazel. We got this Egyptian Travellers Need Assessment, and that's another Ian one. But are we happy that will be confirmed quite soon?
Yes, Chair. That will probably need to be a workshop. It's not a case of a report ready to bring to you. There's more work for members to do on that. So the work programme is as it currently stands. Okay,
thank you, Hazel. So we're all in agreement with that. Just bear with me. Let's go back again. We've got the Cabinet Forward Work Planner. Yep, everybody happy with that? Yep, I got a couple of thumbs up, sir. Right, we'll move 7, and then we'll go to 8 to just confirm the minutes of our previous meeting. Everybody okay? Yep. Thank you. Can I just have a mover and a seconder for that? Yep. Thumbs up or whatever. Yep.
I'll move them, Chair. Martin Groker.
No problem. I got Malcolm and Maureen there agreeing that. Yep. So we move the minutes, and then are we all happy with the 22nd of June for our next meeting? Hazel, could you just make sure that the report there that we've just looked at on the planner is available, and just give us a bit of notice of where if we can't get that report?
Yes, Chair, no problem.
And then I think like today now, yeah, we've took the one item and we've been here for a few hours now and we've had a great meeting there with one item. So we've just got to be careful we don't load ourselves up with too much. I've got the timing of the meetings. It was mentioned to me that the committee agreed for a 10 and then a 10:30. What we need to do is agree. Are we happy with that, or do we want to revert back to a 9:30, 10 o'clock? Anybody got any comments on that? Just open up now and say, please. Maureen?
Yeah, I would rather it went back to the full meeting starting at 10, because we only had one main item today and it's gone to 12:30. If we've had another item as well, we'd be going on later, and especially if people have to go to other meetings. So I would prefer it if we had pre-meeting at 9:30 and the main meeting at 10.
Okay, I've got a couple of thumbs up with that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think I prefer it as it is, actually.
Okay, Sheila?
Just a note, it is 10 o'clock in the diary, so I think it might be useful to sort of stick with the time that's in the diary.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have Tony there.
But,
Tony, sorry.
I can say the 10 o'clock is when the meeting starts. The 9:30 is the pre-meeting. Our pre-meeting today started at 10 and the main meeting started at 10:30.
Yes.
Too late.
Chair, just clarify something. This committee is different to the others because it agreed to start later. So if it says 10 in the diary, then I need to check with Democratic Services because that's a mistake in the diary.
No.
You agreed as a committee that you wanted to start the meeting at 10:30. You did in your last term. In that we had a discussion about it and it was minuted, and members said they would like to have pre-meetings at 9:45 and then they wanted the meeting to start at 10:30. But did do 9:45 today because you only had one item on the agenda. So we went for 10 o'clock pre-meeting start at 10:30. But as you know, all the other selects start at 10 o'clock and they have their pre-meeting 9:30. So it's just a question for you to decide as a committee what you'd like to do, and we can do that.
Okay, I think we're in agreement. I think most members there. Tony, are you okay to start 9:30? Yes.
Yeah, I make the point that when we're not using Zoom and we're meeting in County Hall, there's a distance for me to cover to get to you. That's all. But I'm quite happy with that. If that's what.
Yeah, I think the traffic issue is something that needs to be considered because obviously it's
that's not.
It's easier on Teams, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have no idea when we'll be back in County Hall as a select committee, but Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, we may be continuing with hybrid meetings, which I think is the plan. So we would have a choice of whether we need to travel or to join remotely. So hopefully that will be the way forward. That might be helpful.
I think it's I think we will go back to 9:30 and 10 start meeting as per diary, and we'll see how it goes. I can't see any issues with it. Is everybody happy with that? Yes. Okay. No problem, that's been moved. Thank you for your time, members, and I wish you a good day and stay safe, everyone. And the sun is coming out, hopefully.
Oh, thank you, Simon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hazel, let's have a minute with you, please.
Thanks very much, Simon. Bye-bye, folks.
Thank you.